Hello, and welcome to our Technology and Youth Mental Health series. I'm Yuki Kotani from the Child Mind Institute, and today we're discussing the critical intersection of technology and ethics and youth mental health. At the Child Mind Institute, we believe that we need more ecological data, so real world data that goes beyond surveys and labs to represent actual interactions between people and and technology in their daily lives. So, access to this kind of data presents both tremendous opportunity, but a lot of ethical challenges, particularly concerning equitable outcomes for diverse patient populations. So today, I'm thrilled to be speaking with Casey Pick, Director of Law and Policy at the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project has been at the forefront of leveraging technology for suicide prevention and mental health support for LGBTQ plus youth. So welcome, Casey. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So, Casey, to just get started, can you tell us a bit about the Trevor Project and how technology and social media factors into your work?
Sure. So, the Trevor Project is the leading suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ plus young people. So, we offer 24/7 crisis services where we're able to connect highly trained counselors with LGBTQ plus young people whenever they need support via our telephone, chat, or text platforms. We also try to prevent suicidality among our community by operating a robust research team, advocacy and education programs, and a peer support network, specifically our peer support through Trevor Space, which is the largest safe space social networking site that is specifically designed for LGBTQ young people. It's an online community where LGBTQ plus young people ages 13 through 24 are able to explore their identities, get peer advice or find peer support, and make friends in a moderated community that is designed for them. So, given what we know about social media, and there are so many different ways that it shows up in young people's lives, so many different designs, we think it's helpful also just to lay out some of the benefits that we've seen to Trevor Space and why Trevor has committed to this as an important part of our suicide prevention efforts. First off, it really creates an environment of peer support and advice where users can feel connected to others. That community can really look like everything from posting about the latest Beyonce album that was dropped to trying on names and pronouns and seeing how that fits for young people who are questioning their gender identity. We know that young people are able to make friends and build support networks that they can rely on to work through challenges, which is really important, particularly for our young folks who may find themselves in more isolated communities, more rural environments, or just in places that are less accepting of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Especially in a time period where we are facing increasing rates of censorship and just hostile debate and misinformation about LGBTQ people and our lives and experiences, young folks are able to access resources on desired topics related to mental health, gender identity, and suicide prevention. And finally, we're able to create a safe and affirming, moderated space for our users to feel psychologically protected, to be able to share their experiences with each other. By the numbers, we have more than 650,000 young people have been served since we opened Trevor Space in 2008. Right now, we've got about 400,000 pieces of unique content generated by users per month. So it's a lively environment. Lots is going on. And really important is there are 180 countries represented across the world on Trevor Space. So this is one of our one major program that is truly global.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Right, this sort of this multifaceted approach of trying to, you know, not only just provide the content and solutions and resources, but also actually providing the space, virtually for the community to be able to express themselves. Um, and it's very clear that technology plays just a really vital role in your mission. So speaking of technology, I kind of want to talk about sort of the ethical considerations.
Mhm.
So, given the population, the young people you work with at Trevor Project, how do you think about sort of the dual challenge of, right, protecting the young people's privacy, while ensuring equitable access to resources and care.
Protecting the privacy of young people is paramount. Privacy is essential to trust, and nothing that we do at the Trevor Project works without trust, whether it is a young person reaching out to us in crisis or trusting Trevor Space as a safe environment where they can be all of themselves. So we understand the importance of protecting youth data while also ensuring equitable access to resources and care. Uh, some of what that looks like: for starters, we've compiled a list for young people to read when it comes to how they can protect their own privacy and safety online. We really believe in the power of young people when provided with agency and autonomy to be able to make smart decisions. We also provide community updates to young people about privacy concerns they should know about as we become aware of them. For example, when we take photos on our phones, many phones today will now include location data within that picture's metadata. It's known as EXIF data, which stands for Exchangeable Image File Format. And while this can be really helpful to us personally, like if you're looking at your phone to try and find pictures from a vacation that you took, it can also be really concerning that these photos are uploaded to the internet containing this data. A bad actor could use it to find the location of whoever took the photo or whoever uploaded it. Thankfully, many phones can allow this information to be turned off. We decided to inform our users at Trevor Space about this practice, and also, as an added precaution, added a feature to Trevor Space that strips this data from photos up automatically when it's uploaded. So we want them to be able to share and communicate, but we really want to make sure that they are informed and that we do our part to help protect them from sharing more than they want to. We will also really encourage young people to be mindful of the data that they share online, things like their home location, their full names. And in our community, we naturally tend to see many LGBTQ plus young people choosing to use avatars instead of their real photo. So both platforms and users can take proactive steps to ensure that privacy is prioritized.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so important. I really like how you started saying with the key focus is empowering, right? Like it's educating the youth to actually know what to do. It's not saying like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. It's just saying, hey, these are the impacts of certain things that you're doing, and to just be mindful of it and be able to make the right decisions. Um, and so this leads me to kind of particularly interested me about your approach at the Trevor Project. So you mentioned Trevor Space, um, and it's interesting, right? As a suicide prevention organization, that you also run a social media site. So I would love to kind of hear more about the thinking behind that and what you learned from operating Trevor Space.
Certainly. So, as you noted, there's been a lot of discussion about social media and mental health, particularly recently. The US Surgeon General has even gone so far as to advise warning labels for social media with regards to how it could potentially affect youth mental health. That said, particularly for LGBTQ plus youth, we know that social media plays a unique role, and their experience can be really distinct of how social media affects their mental health. Teens and young adults are actively turning to online sources to help cope with mental health, to find resources that they feel that they can trust or that they can access without having to, for example, pay a lot of money, or even in some cases, having to actually speak directly to another human being about topics that they are concerned will subject them to rejection, discrimination, stigma, or even violence. So, despite the potential harms that exist, we know that social media allows LGBTQ young people to explore their identities, to find peer support and acceptance that they may not find elsewhere, and to make friends in online communities. So, the question for us is not if social media, but how. What should it look like? How should it be framed? So, specifically with Trevor Space, our team has invested deeply in what's known as positive youth development, an approach to youth development research and practice that emphasizes young people's capacities and strengths rather than their risks and deficits, and the importance of intentionally cultivating developmental relationships. Long story short on this, we partnered with one of the leaders in the industry, Search Institute, to better understand how Trevor Space can be supporting positive youth development. And we discovered some really exciting results after working directly with over 600 young people who use our platform. So we learned that LGBTQ plus young people have some really incredible strengths and assets, including high social responsibility and other positive values. We found that regular use of Trevor Space was actually associated with higher levels of most reported strengths. So, what that means is that in a time when social media use is often deemed harmful to young people, we found that frequency of use of Trevor Space actually correlated to higher developmental relationships, better boundaries and expectations, and able to communicate these things, a sense of empowerment, support, and a sense of community. These are things that come about because of the way the platform is structured, the way it is monitored, the norms and values that are embedded in it and communicated and maintained, not just through our moderators, but actually through the young people themselves, such that they're able to develop a community that helps them to result in two major positive youth development outcomes of increased well-being and friendship. So it can be done, that social media can be a safe and positive environment. And that really does line up with our young people's experiences with social media across the board. When we research LGBTQ plus youths' experiences on social media, across all of the platforms, not just Trevor Space, more than 90% of them will tell us that social media can have a positive effect on their mental health. At the same time, nearly as many tell us that social media can have a negative effect on their mental health. It truly is mixed. So the question for us and the great challenge is, how can we mitigate the harms while enhancing the strengths?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, it's so inspiring to hear just about how Trevor Space, how it's evolved and this impact on the community. And I like how you kind of phrase it. It's not if, but right, how. Like how? What did you say? I think you said, how should we look at it? How it should be built? How should it be used? And I think that's so important. And I don't know if you've also as part of the series, I also interviewed Amy Green from Hope Lab, and they had conducted a survey, and they also found very similar findings that social media, especially within the LGBTQ plus community, that there is a more significant sort of positive impact. Obviously, there's a dual nature, and there's also obviously a negative, but a positive impact of social and online communities. Um, so kind of shifting from kind of, I guess, the operational side to more broader policy perspectives. So over the past year, many policymakers have proposed a variety of interventions framed around protecting youth mental health online. Last month we hosted a discussion around the need for better data to actually understand what interventions work and don't, how to best support teens that are in need, and what does policy landscape look like for this particular issue right now. So improving researcher access to data and what's happening for youth online. What are your sort of thoughts around that in terms of how policymakers should be thinking about youth mental health?
This is such a important topic that it absolutely deserves to be something that is rooted in evidence, that is rooted in the science, that is listening directly to the voices of those most affected, which will be the young people who will be directly affected by their access to platforms. So, what is exciting right now is that we are increasingly hearing more voices and seeing more and better research being done to observe how young people, including LGBTQ plus young people, are relating to social media and what they want to see, what will truly be helpful to them. So, from our perspectives, we do know that nearly all American young people are on social media. We also know that this is particularly true for our LGBTQ plus young folks, more than 95% of whom are using one or more social media platforms. We're also very well aware that the mental health concerns that have been raised with regards to social media, depression, anxiety, eating disorders or body image issues, and ultimately suicidality, all of these are concerns that are disproportionately high for LGBTQ plus youth. So from my perspective, if it is possible to address these concerns, to mitigate the potential risks to mental health on social media, that will have a disproportionate benefit for LGBTQ youth. And so I am greatly appreciative of the good intentions of the lawmakers who are bringing forward policy proposals to address these concerns. The question, once again, is not should we regulate in this area, but how? What does that look like? And it really needs to be a thoughtful issue. This can't just be a we need to do something, because if we get this wrong, we are at risk of taking away important, even life saving resources from some of our most vulnerable young people.
Yeah, no, 100%. You know, one of the things, right, with policymakers is oftentimes you don't want it to be an emotional decision, right? Like you want it to be data driven.
Mhm.
So, do you and the work that you're doing at Trevor Project, are there types of data that you're trying to promote to push out to policymakers that so that they're aware as they're making these policy decisions?
Certainly. So, once again, really wanting to listen to the voices of young people. So, you have research like that the Trevor Project has put out recently, which simply asks LGBTQ plus youth, where do you find a safe and accepting environment? And unfortunately, today we know that only about a third of LGBTQ plus young people will tell us that their home feels like a safe and accepting environment for their identity. It's about half that will say their school is a safe and affirming environment, but it rises to more than 60%, nearly 2/3, when we're talking about access to an online environment that is safe and affirming. So that will surprise some folks because they'll be very aware of the reality that on those same platforms, LGBTQ plus youth are experiencing bullying. But it is sometimes, yes, they experience negative input, bullying, discrimination, etc., everywhere, online and offline. But sometimes the online environment is the only place where they'll find that affirming environment, where they're able to learn about their own identities, communicate with their peers in the community, or see representation that gives them hope for a future that they can strive for.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's so important that right, looking at the actual data, what the youth are saying, actually, writes a whole different narrative than I think maybe what the general population is hearing. So I think that's so critical. Um, so Casey, thank you so much for sharing just such valuable insight into Trevor Project and your own perspectives and the work that you're doing at the intersection of technology and youth mental health and now policy. It's I think what you're doing is making such a difference, and it's just so inspiring. So just to kind of wrap up, what we're hearing. Obviously, I think every single topic that we cover, we can go much deeper into, but ultimately, I think what we're hearing is that this is a multi-pronged approach where technology has to be part of the sort of the solution that we provide to youth. We have to really listen to what youth are saying, look at the data, hear their story, empower the youth so that they actually understand how to navigate this sort of complex digital internet world that we live in. And then also for us to focus on how can we actually provide a safe online community, and not so much on like does it provide that. We know that there is dual nature. There's the positive and the negatives, but then how do we sort of create an environment where we focus more on the positive? Casey, do you have any sort of final thoughts or piece of advice you would like to share with our audience on this topic?
Just that we know that there are solutions, there are positive ways that we can use the powerful tool that social media and technology can be. That's all they are, is tools, and they are what we make of them.
Yeah. So, Casey, once again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us today. Stay tuned for more. There's a lot more discussions in this youth technology and youth mental health series. So, thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much.